What's going on, everybody? Now tune into the Re-Up podcast. Here with my co-host Hector 61. We have a very special guest joining us live on Zoom. This next special guest we have is a little different than our usual guests. Usually we have, like entrepreneurs and we have, music artists and people in the media. But this person is more of like I would say more of like a philanthropist, more of a person who dedicates himself to giving back within the Black community. Clinton Ikioda, our next guest, he's a teacher and currently graduated from Cornell last year, I believe, right? Graduated from Cornell last year. All right, but honestly, and he's teaching at a charter school, which correct me if I'm wrong, like you're it pretty much is it all minority charter school, or does it like specialize?
So we are, our student demographics, our student population are mostly Black and Latino students.
Perfect. Okay. All right, awesome. So let's just welcome to the show, Clinton Ikioda, ladies and gentlemen. All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, man. Even within the circumstances, because right now a lot of people aren't doing interviews, a lot of people aren't, posting as much content and stuff like that as they want to. So for you to just come through real quick and talk to us and educate us on what's going on based on your point of view as a not only as literally like as African American, but as like an educator as well. We definitely really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get into into deep conversation, just give the audience like a background of who you are, what you do, like where you were born and everything.
Copy. So my name is Clinton Ikioda. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. I moved here to the United States in 2007. So August of this year would make 13 years that I've been here in the United States. I'm from Queens, New York. I went to elementary school right up the block from my house. And then that got closed down. And then I went to a Catholic school for 7th and 8th grade, just a little bit, not that far away from my house. I attended St. Francis Preparatory School. That's how I met Mateo. Yep. We're not going to go into that school.
Nope.
I attended that school. Graduated 2015 and went on to Cornell University, where I got my bachelor's degree in biology and society with a minor in education. I'm a teacher. Teaching is always what I've always wanted to do. Teaching is always where I felt like I belong, and especially teaching my own and teaching Black and brown students. That's what my life's calling is, and that's what I'm dedicating my career to, which is really uplifting Black and brown youth and uplifting them to be powerful citizens in society. I teach STEM. I teach science and mathematics, and it's interesting because I am the only Black male science teacher in my school.
Wow.
Black male science teacher in my school. Before, we had some new hires, I was the only Black science teacher at the school. So it's been interesting hearing from kids about their experiences with Black teachers, if they've even had Black teachers, their experiences with white teachers. And I'm excited to be on this podcast and talk about a lot about my experience, but that's what I've dedicated my life to do, is really uplifting Black and brown youth, because I think uplifting the youth is so critical to the movement that we are currently participating in right now.
That's amazing. So like you said before, like me and you went to high school together, and obviously since I've known you, you've always been like not only like a super cool and down to earth guy, but also like super intelligent and super smart. And like honestly, you could like, just from me, like from my own experience, like look, like seeing, like meeting you, you could have been anything. Honestly, you could have like you could have been like, I thought you were gonna be like a doctor, like a mad scientist, like a lawyer, because like your intellect, like you have the motivation to work for stuff like that. So I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a little bit surprised when you announced that you want to be a teacher. I was like, damn, a teacher, like, is he sure like you didn't want to be like a lawyer, a doctor, something like that? But like, because I didn't know that you wanted to give back like that, like in that degree. So did you always know that you want to be a teacher, or was that kind of like maybe you were in college and you realized that like you had a bigger life calling?
Right. So it's actually interesting. I always knew that I wanted to teach. I always knew that I wanted to be in education. However, let's think about the value of education in today's society, right? Teachers are severely underpaid, right? It is a profession that is looked down upon. It's a profession that is it's a profession that is looked at as a woman, quote unquote, profession, right?
Yes, it is.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's what it is. And so I battled with that in high school because I went to St. Francis Prep, which was a college prep school that, like really, really gave you excellent education, right? And I loved science. Science was my thing. Like I had biology with Mateo, and he could tell you like that was, one of my favorite classes.
Yeah, no.
And I thought that because I loved science, I wanted to be a doctor, right? And that was the rhetoric that was always preached to me, is like science equals doctor, science equals doctor. So I went into college actually pre-med. I went into college actually on track to be a doctor. It was my freshman spring that I decided that this is actually not what I want to do for several different reasons. One, I hate seeing blood. So I don't know why I thought I was going to be a doctor. Yeah. And I did a summer internship my freshman summer going into my sophomore year, and it's called Breakthrough New York or Breakthrough Collaborative. And it's a summer program that teaches high-performing, low-income students from several different areas within the United States. There are several different branches. There's one in New York, New Jersey, San Francisco, Texas, whatever. They're all over the state. And I was a part of a teaching cohort that taught 7th grade science. And throughout that summer, I realized that this is really my true calling. This is really where I belong. This is really where I could be myself. There is no greater profession than you impacting the landscape of one's future. It was a teacher that impacted me to be the person that I am today, right? When I moved to this country, I was in the 5th grade, and it was my Black teacher, who I didn't have for the whole year actually, who actually pushed me to still overcome all of the obstacles that I was facing, not only being new to the US, but also being Black in the US, right? So that was something that I knew that was so important to me. And that was something that I knew that I always wanted to give back to my community. I always wanted to know that the education system has significantly marginalized students of color. I know that the education system, the education that I received, I have a brother that's going to New York City public school right now. The education that I received at St. Francis Prep does not match the education that he's received, right? It's the same things that was emphasized in my learning while I was at St. Francis Prep is not the same thing that is emphasized in a lot of schools that do teach predominantly Black and brown students. And so my thing is that given the fact that I have been a part of the quote unquote white education, I really had to think about, okay, what am I doing to give back to my own community, right? What am I doing to give back to and uplift my own students so that they can also be somebody and they could also empower their own, and this could go on from generation to generation to generation. And so like, that was all, like, that was my main motivation to go into teaching, is really just to like uplift the youth. I think there's so much emphasis in uplifting your youth. I think there's so much importance in you developing the next generation of Black Girl Magic and Black Boy Joy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's important that kids see that you can be Black and be in STEM. I think it's important that kids see that like you can be Black and be, yes, I'm a teacher, but I expose my kids to Black people in so many different fields: Black doctors, Black lawyers, Black entrepreneurs, Black musicians. You know what I'm saying? Just expose them to the beauty that is Blackness, right? I think that kids are really, really exposed to, you know, our whitewashed ways of looking at things. Everything is the norm for our kids is whiteness. And my job is to deconstruct that norm and actually say that, look, your people, like Black people, are doing the damn thing. And just because you are systemically oppressed, or just because your education system is still continuously putting you down, doesn't mean that you cannot rise above it. And so what we're gifting our students with is not only just owning, like, being proud of being Black, but also being resilient. You know what I'm saying? Right. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I mean, for the most part, I just want to, as I segue into my segment, I gotta applaud you, bro, because honestly, that was a great start. But I think from the get-go, what you do is amazing. First of all, you introduced yourself as someone who went to Cornell. I actually had also a friend who went to Cornell out of high school, and we haven't kept up since. But he was also in line to do exactly what you did. He wanted to be a doctor too. But I find it more amazing that you dedicated your life to giving back, but advocating for the teaching of the generation behind us. Yes. You know what I mean? So the pressure, I feel like coming out of college, but that is brought up systematically, is that most of the time when you go to these high intellectual schools, absolutely, the mindset is, he's probably going to work at a Goldman Sachs, an AIG, absolutely, or a Lehman Brothers. You know what I mean? Absolutely. It's monetary. It's not community wise. Absolutely. So I was going to ask you, you said by the end of this year, it will be 13 years since you've left your motherland in Nigeria to come here. I want you to talk a little bit about the differences between coming from Nigeria over here. And the one thing that most people say is that this is the land of opportunity. So I want you to almost delve into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, don't even let me get started on the American dream because, oh my God, I have so many views on that. So in terms of my transition here was hard in so many different ways. And one thing that I realized upon reflecting is I grew up in Nigeria that is all Black. Nobody ever questions their Blackness, right? Nobody ever questions the fact that they're Black. And so that was never a topic of conversation. Nobody really ever talked about race. It was never a topic of conversation where we were because everybody was experiencing the same thing. The systems of oppression that occur in Nigeria are completely, to some degree, different from the systems of oppression that are here in the US. I think that when I moved here is and it was transparently when I got to college, I kid you not, end of my senior year, going into college, that I really started to become aware of how relevant my race is in society. All throughout high school, I think that I was trying to fit in. And that's exactly how I was cultivated in Nigerian culture. Is yo, you got to do whatever you got to do to just make it through. You got to do whatever you got to do to just, you know what I'm saying, push to it. Hey, if you got to assimilate, if you got to, you know what I'm saying, be to yourself, just do whatever you got to do to survive, right? And so that's what I was doing, right? In high school, I used to hang, towards my junior, senior year, started hanging out with all these white people and you know what I'm saying, trying to assimilate myself because I wasn't confident enough in my Blackness and I wasn't confident enough in who I was as an individual because I didn't necessarily have to be. You know what I'm trying to say? I didn't necessarily have to be empowered in a way because my Blackness was never something I questioned until I came here. And you hear about, you know what I'm saying, cops shooting Black people. You hear about people being Black people being followed when they go shopping. You hear about people calling people the N-word. You know what I'm trying to say? You hear about all of these things, and all these things were puzzling to me because
right.
Why is there discrimination here?
Right.
But part of it is that I am privileged in a way in that I still never really had to question my Blackness because I grew up in a predominantly Black country.
Yeah,
you know what I'm trying to say?
Of course.
But in terms of the experience, there are a lot of things that are different from Nigeria. And here, I do think that things have changed over there since I left. But just in terms of schooling is way, way different there than it is here. In terms of how we, what we emphasize in schools is really, really, really different from what we emphasize here. The economy and the way the economy works is completely different from our economy here. Like I said, they're facing a lot more different struggles than we are facing here. Here, we are fighting for the equal rights of Black people. We are literally fighting for the rights of Black people. You know what I'm trying to say? As simple as that sounds, that's literally what we're still fighting for, is for the rights of Black people. Over there are a lot more different issues. I think they're all still fighting for rights over there too, but it's not necessarily, I want a white person to treat me the same way that they treat each other. It's a whole bunch of different shit.
Right. Because over there, there's no question of having Black government or Black leadership because that that you're in Africa. That's not even a question.
Everything is you see yourself everybody. Right. Right. So coming here and going to Cornell and you know what I'm saying, and then reflecting on my time is really, really relevant. And this shit is actually important. And I think that's also why it persuaded me to also go into urban education.
Interesting. So let's dive into some stuff there. How was Cornell? How was Cornell for you? As an African American, because Cornell sounds pretty white. Obviously, Cornell's not a quote unquote Black school per se.
Yeah, Cornell was a struggle. I kid you. I'm not gonna lie. Cornell was the struggle for so many different reasons. First things, I'm first finished. First, my parents ever graduated from college. My parents never. You know what I'm saying? College was really not really the goal. And that was something that my parents very focused on, was really, really focusing on my academics. And there was not a lot of supports at home that I could reach out to help me to guide my way through Cornell. And so a lot of my experience at Cornell was building a community for myself. It's so easy in a predominantly white school. Black students on Cornell's campus, I believe, made up 7 or 8% of Cornell's total population.
Wow.
Right? Cornell is a predominantly white school.
I have heard that.
Yeah, and as a person of color, I'm going to specify, as a Black person, I had to solidify my own community. So that involved me joining a historically Black Greek letters organization. That involved me really, really immersing myself in Black literature. That involved me really, really staying true to my Blackness and really uplifting members of my own, of the Black community at Cornell, because we are so systemically marginalized by the systems run by Cornell University. So at the end of the day, like, I felt alone at Cornell University because I was Black, but also I was a part of a community that uplifted me and guided me and supported me so that I could reach, the graduation. Transparently, there's an organization on Cornell's campus that literally works to increase the graduation rate of Black men at Cornell. Because there was a time where the graduation rate for Black men at Cornell University was at its all-time motherfucking low. And that's something that Cornell will never, ever, ever admit to or never ever talk about. Issues of systemic racism,
buried under the rug.
Administration, you will never talk about that. So a lot of, like, a lot of what you got to do there, especially as a person of color, is really, really building your own community. Is like really, really building your own community. I think that while I was on there, I was fortunate enough to have done a summer program before actually enrolling. And so, like, I knew a lot of the supports and I knew a lot of the resources that I could use to make my time there easier, and that I could also tell other people, other underclassmen, other freshmen, sophomores, or whatever. I was able to let them know about those resources, so that they could also feel welcome and feel as a part of the community. But I definitely felt alone. My freshman year, I actually considered transferring back home. I was actually thinking about transferring to St. John's University my freshman year because of how alone I felt and how I felt like I didn't belong. Like Mateo was telling me, like, like, I was somebody who did get very, very good grades in high school, very, very good grades, like, all my life. And going into Cornell was the first time I ever saw, like, a 30 or get, like, a 15 on an exam. And that shit holds weight because your GPA really, really matters because, like,
absolutely.
You feel me? Because I think you brought up a really, really good point. This is not to segue, but, like, I think you brought up a very good point. You said, like, you expect me to work at, like, a Goldman Sachs. Or JP or, Morgan Stanley. That's the culture there. Legitimately, bro. Like, that is the culture there. I made a whole big issue about this while I was over there as, like, you need to be able to define your own success and not let anybody else define it for you. When you're on that campus, you are exposed to so many different things. Like, there's mad people going on the career fairs with the Goldman Sachs and the Accentures and the Bain and Company and the Boston Consulting Group and the JPs and the Morgan Stanleys. And it's so hard. My junior year of college, I thought that's what I wanted to do. Legitimately, I was going to career fairs thinking that I was going to sit and work for corporate America, which I vowed I would never do in my entire life. But I thought that it was something that I was interested in doing because that's the narrative that is preached there. Being a teacher is not something that is preached. There is no education major. The education minor is also very, very bad. It's really a psychology minor. What's really, really, really preached there is doctor, lawyer, engineer, and if you're going into the finance world, right? Okay. That's where a lot of people's concentrations and focus very inauthentic in that space, which is why you need to, one, be comfortable within yourself, and you also need to build yourself a community of like-minded individuals that support you despite whatever path you choose to take.
That's very interesting. So, like, do you feel like you've also shared before that teaching is a very underappreciated and underfunded career choice? Do you think do you think that, like, these big schools like Cornell and like any other big time Ivy League schools, do you think maybe that has to do with, like, Cornell not taking education serious or not, like, like preaching that the education is like a big career?
I think it has to do with the government, and I think it has to do with
great response, right?
Your appreciation of teachers. You know what I'm saying? Teachers are. Let me tell you something. Like, the average salary, depending on your state, the average salary for a first year teacher, depending on, and this is being very, very generous, is maybe $55,000, right? Yeah. For a first year teacher, right? Depending on your state. In some other states, I think it's like 35, 36, 32.
No, you're right. Yep.
That's completely before taxes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a teacher in New York City, like you may be getting paid 56, 59, but in actuality, you're being paid like 40, 42, because New York City taxes are ridiculously high.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it really has to do with what the government values. The government doesn't value teachers. It doesn't value teachers. It doesn't value education, proper education.
And not to cut you off real quick, bro. I was gonna actually tell you, and with the increase in technology, it's only gonna get worse, because we hear all the time, what is a common phrase that most youngsters are using now? Bro, I can just YouTube it.
Exactly. Like as we get more technologically advanced, the importance of teachers, quote unquote, systemically is decreasing. But I think that is such a stupid. I think that teachers need to be paid more. I think that teachers need to be appreciated more. I think that teachers need to be held to a higher standard. We are working with, I really don't think that people really think about what education is. We are building the next generation. Like, we are building the leaders of tomorrow.
Future
all of those
America.
Motherfuckers that are sitting in Goldman Sachs, all of the motherfuckers that are sitting in Bain and yes, earning the six figures, kudos to them. But you're there. You can't say that you're not there because somebody taught you, right? You went to school.
Yes, of course.
There's no way that you could have been in that position and somebody hadn't given you the information necessary for you to advance to that. So at the end of the day, I think that the government needs to I think the government is just seeing like school as this something you got to do. This is something you got to do, but not really understanding the importance of it. And it transcends into our communities.
Right.
It transcends into our communities. If you're not looking at it, if you're not appreciating teachers, if you're not appreciating education, why the fuck is anybody in any community going to appreciate teachers and appreciate the work that teachers are doing? Not to say that teachers need appreciation. Nobody really gives a fuck, because if you're going into education, you know for a fact that you're not going into it for money, right? But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? Like, we got to think about it on a systemic view. In that it's not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily schools like Cornell. I think it's the whole system in general. It is devalued education. Or let me specify. It only values the education, the proper education of white people, but not the proper emphasis on proper education of students of color.
And then what is proper? You know what I mean?
Man. Shit, what is proper? Sheesh.
Go off.
You feel me? So let's think about what is. So I teach at a charter school, and a lot of the charter schools are known for their behavior management system, right? There are a lot of the slack on charter schools is that they police kids and they everything is curtailed to behavior. I think that's the rhetoric around a lot of schools that have predominantly Black and brown students. The curriculum or teachers don't emphasize rigorous thinking. They don't emphasize you being able to formulate your own ideas. They don't emphasize you being able to think analytically. What they're focusing on is controlling you. Now, let's move to the white schools. Let's move to a school in like Long Island, like a rich part of Long Island, New York. Right? I actually turned down an offer from a high school in Long Island just because of that. But
interesting. Okay.
In white schools, if you really think about what they're emphasizing like the thinking. They're emphasizing like actually analytical reading. They have thousands of resources, hundreds of like millions of resources for their kids, which is why their kids end up doing better on tests, which is why their kids end up more likely getting into a lot of these schools, these top name schools. A lot of them are getting these jobs because the education that they're receiving favors the white race. You go to some predominantly Black schools that don't have textbooks. Their textbooks are outdated.
There's no funding for those type of schools.
You feel me?
Yeah.
Like
right.
Technology is outdated. Curriculum is outdated. Teacher retention is at its all-time motherfucking low. Leadership retention is at its all-time fucking low. Police is all over the school. Like you really, it's literally a tale of two cities. You really got to think about what does it really mean to be educated in a specific area of South Jamaica, Queens, or in a specific area of Brooklyn or Brownsville, Brooklyn, or whatever, and then look at fucking, I don't know, like I don't know, Suffolk County in Long Island.
Yeah.
Or you look at Stony Brook in Long. Right. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Also, proper education, right? We want proper education. White people are taught that whiteness is like the dominant.
Yeah,
race.
dominant.
Like,
yeah, dominant.
You are taught that from school, right? And a lot, like I went off about this shit. When things like this happen, like when issues like a lot like what we're fighting about today happen, the narrative is always, let's empower our Black and Latinx students. Let's empower our students of color. Let's teach them all of their history, and let's empower them, and let's have these conversations in there, and let's make sure that they are growing up knowing the knowledge of their true history and are feeling empowered by that, so that they could go on to continue to fight for what we're fighting for right now. However, while we're doing that, I think it's also important that white people or white teachers are also teaching the same things to their students, and not teach it as, well, this is the struggle narrative of people of color, we gotta learn it. But teaching as, what is the impact of whiteness on greater society? How does your identity as a white person in general put people of color at a severe disadvantage? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's not always, and it looks like that in so many different ways. I want to say, for instance, Pratt, I don't think that we ever talked about a Black scientist.
Nope, never.
You know what I'm saying? Or a scientist of color. My U.S. history and government class, we studied all of this shit, took the Regents, niggas scored a 97, all of this shit. There was no type of information to actually tell me the real history of the United States of America. That is something that I gotta go seek out on my own. So now you gotta really think about, that was what I was receiving in a school that didn't just have white people, but had Black people, Hispanic, it was a diverse school, right? So now you got to think about, what the fuck are they teaching them in the schools that are predominantly white? They are teaching them that whiteness is the norm. And until white people stop that and stop being complacent with that, it's going to be the same shit that is happening over and over and over again. And people of color are going to get to a point, like it looks now, with people looting and people rioting, is going to come to a point where violence is going to be the motherfucking answer, and I'm all here for it. At the end of the day, like, what are you teaching your white students? Are you teaching your white kids that white people are the forefront of STEM? Are you calling out the low-key racist ideologies that the New York State Regents curriculum or the Common Core curriculum or whatever curriculum is promoting? Are you as a white person being complacent within your privilege to still teach this, knowing the significant generational impacts that it has on Black folk? So at the end of the day, yes, we can continue to empower our Black and brown kids, and yes, go to an HBCU, and yes, you know what I'm saying, like, learn and feel empowered, and I believe in that, and God help me, like, I will continue to do that for my Black folk. But now, like, I'm really, my point of direction is focusing on the white people and the white schools, and y'all gotta start educating y'all own. Y'all are not dumb. Y'all know what's going on. Y'all know the history that you're teaching is trash. It's McGraw-Hill education. That shit is not real. That shit is not the real history of the United States. You gotta keep empowering my Black and brown kids, but you're not learning about the reason that I gotta empower my Black and brown kids, because ultimately I gotta. Perfect. You feel me? Ultimately, the reason why I gotta empower them is because of you. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I feel like in a sense, not to cut you off, but I feel like in a sense, it's kind of like they don't want, like, white people, white educators, and people who create these curriculums. And let's be honest, Common Core, these curriculums have been taught for 50 years. They've been, they've been implemented by white educators and white, So for me, it kind of seems like they just don't want to be taken out of their comfort zone. Like, of course, it's you know how easy it is to talk about Christopher Columbus in Italian. You know how easy it is to talk about, like Albert Einstein. It's, you know how easy it is to talk about Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, who, by the way, George Washington owned slaves, and I don't think a lot of people really realize stuff like that. Like
over 40 slaves.
Yeah, the founding fathers owned slaves. Like, so therefore, when they talk about like, we need equal rights for all men, that's not even like, you're not like the foundation of our country is based on bias and based on lies. So so it's kind of like I'm sorry, but like these educators, they don't realize that what they're teaching kids and what we're being taught as a country in our country's norms, it's all a bias and it's all a lie for the most part.
when you really look at it, it's intentional marginalization. Yep, absolutely.
It is. They know what they're doing. Like they know, which is why I'm saying like all I'm about to send a whole email to them. They sent out a whole statement. That shit was bullshit because there was no acknowledgement whatsoever
of police brutality or anything else.
Thank you. That Black Lives Matter. You're talking about we stand with the peaceful protest that Martin Luther King was preaching, and we don't stand with looting and rioting. But you're so stupid and you're so uninformed that you don't know the reason why people are.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. If you focus on the wrong things, you're not really focusing on the reasons why people are looting and people are rioting.
Exactly.
You're instead focused on the specific action. And you're not also focused about how your school perpetuates what we're trying to fight against. Even though I know about the many different ways in which that school specifically, and a lot of schools that are in predominantly white districts do perpetuate it. And so, like, I really think it starts with the youth. It starts with them when they are this small. Like, it starts with the books that they're reading. In English literature, are they actually reading books? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we read To Kill a Mockingbird in high school.
Right.
But the discussion of I'm really remembering ninth grade English. I don't remember us actually discussing what the implications of To Kill a Mockingbird are on today's society. There's a difference between you teaching To Kill a Mockingbird and teaching, Atticus Finch defended a white man who was accused of raping, Atticus Finch defended a black man who was accused of raping a white woman, even though he didn't do it. Okay, cool. Yeah. But how does that racism play a role in today's society?
Yeah.
Right? That was never discussed.
Right.
And that is what white people need to actually start opening their eyes to start discussing. It's not okay. And that's why, like, niggas always think, yes, let's put the African American history and Latinx history courses in white schools. Cool. We are going to the right direction, but how are you teaching those courses?
Exactly.
Are you teaching the struggle narrative? Are you teaching white students to pity? Or are you teaching white students to reflect on their identity and the impacts of their identity?
And how they get help moving forward and not be like the ignorance that they read within these books.
Exactly. And that's the education. That's the proper education that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
the education that we're receiving right now is bullshit.
Right. Literature for me, because I was before I went to communications, I was an English major for 2 semesters. Mm-hmm. What literature is pretty much a reflection of what was going on within that time period. And the reason we still talk about that type of literature is because somehow, some way, it still affects today's society. Even if you read like the Odyssey, the fact that there's still war going on, like we still love the warrior, type of like storyline, like it still affects today's generation, right? Mm-hmm. So stuff like To Kill a Mockingbird is interesting because, even though it's a fictional story, right? Yeah. It's set in the 1950s. Emmett Till, a 14-year-old boy who was literally lynched and mutilated for quote unquote apparently whistling at a white woman. That was actually true. And unfortunately, I'm not sure. I don't think he got a fair trial. Well, obviously he didn't get a fair trial because he was killed. Absolutely. He wasn't gone to trial. First of all, it should never be a crime, even if a 14-year-old whistles at anybody. It shouldn't be a crime. Like, obviously, they should be disciplined by parents.
There's an underlying systematic issue, like you just said, Mateo. I mean, there's tons of examples. We can talk about the Montgomery bombs. We can talk about the two little that were killed in the church in Alabama. We can talk about
Black Wall Street.
Exactly. We can talk about Medgar Evers. A movement that keeps going on today. And I thought that you put it perfectly before that the way things are being handled, it's as though they're trying to wash away, but not so much wash away. They're trying to, in a sense, act as though history doesn't repeat itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When we see it continuously happen, and it's like you said, are you really just teaching and letting your children see the sentiment? Are you just teaching them almost like sentiment, or are you really analyzing the problem? You feel me?
Exactly. And it comes from white folk educating themselves too, because how you gonna educate youth if you yourself don't know, right?
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, it's like, y'all gotta realize, and which is why I get so mad when y'all protest, and I get so mad, but I'm like, okay, go to a protest, thank you. Repost on Facebook, thank you. But what are you actively doing within your community to combat this? Y'all go
right, exactly.
You go to protest, you go home, you post on Facebook. There's nothing being fucking changed.
Yeah.
There's nothing. You are still complacent within your whiteness. you are still saying that, look, Black Lives Matter, but at the end of the day, that shit still don't concern me. I'm still good over here. It don't matter. I don't got to do shit because at the end of the day, this is what benefits me. But white people are not comfortable owning that, right? Everybody wants
exactly.
How to get, be fragile and cry and I'm not racist. They want to do all of that. But until people realize what the root of the problem is and what the impact of the problem is, there is no change whatsoever. Which is why I think the system has to be uprooted completely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another thing I was gonna say too. Sorry to cut you off real quick. We talk about this. I think it's brought up a lot. Mm-hmm. Let's not lie like we don't know this. It's as though they try to there's a problem going on, and it starts with privilegedness. You know what I mean? It starts with privilegedness, and sometimes I feel as though white people try to almost like act as though they don't know that exists.
Absolutely.
Everything is the same for everyone. Absolutely. All people can come into a certain place and it'll be all the same regulation when we know that's a lie. Absolutely. We see the looks. We see the attitude. Absolutely. So, I mean, until that is fixed itself, I mean, this is going to continue. I think that the protests that are going on right now, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I've seen some things I can say in my life, but I've got to give some type of credit because I think that after George Floyd's murder, unlawful murder, I think as though there's something strong on its way. And if you thought that there was a year that it could go down, I'm not gonna lie, this is the year where you couldn't pick a better timing. I have never seen nothing like this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And like I also put onus on people of color too. And I was talking about this yesterday. I think that, and this is myself included, and I'm very, very guilty of this. And this is something that like I know that I'm going to change, right? I think that as people of color, when we're in white spaces, right? When we're in white spaces, or I was taught from when I was little about, just complying, just if they say anything that rubs you the wrong way, just say, shut the fuck up. Don't say nothing.
Humble yourself, right?
Humble yourself. Just, it's like I'm just going through with the motions, right? And I've been taught to also tone down my Blackness in predominantly white spaces, which I did a lot at prep, which I did a lot at Cornell. And here's what I always push a lot of people of color to do, is stop doing that. Because, you see, at the end of the day, and stop doing that. And some people may say, yo, that's what I got to do to keep my job. That's what I got to do to keep my scholarship. If people are in the academia, getting PhDs or a master's or whatever, shit. My supervisor is white. My private, my principal investigator is white. You know what I'm saying? I got to make sure I'm on his good side. Yeah. But as people of color, as Black people, also like we have to be willing to sacrifice for our freedom. So if that means that you got to lose your job, like if that means, because let's think of. Like really, really think about this shit, right? Like Rosa Parks, right? I'm pretty sure she knew that by not giving up her seat to a white woman, she was going to get arrested. I'm pretty sure she already knew that.
Yeah, right? at the least get arrested. At the least.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But she still sat down. She still gave up her. At the end of the day, we know that she knew that was a sacrifice that she had to make, kind of. You know what I'm trying to say? Like that was a sacrifice that she had to make, knowing the implications of it, knowing the impacts, right. She had to still make that sacrifice as a Black woman. And so, like, just like our predecessors, Martin Luther King, even though his whole approach was peaceful protesting, I'm pretty sure he knew that at the end of the day, that by doing this, he was putting his life on the line, right? It's the same mentality that we gotta have. And I'm not talking about, put your life on the line, but shit, we have to be willing to give up something. We gotta be willing to sacrifice, because at the end of the day, this is a fight that's gonna affect not only our children, but our children's children and our children's children's children. They are going to be reaping the benefits. I, as a Black person, I'm currently reaping the benefits that my predecessors fought for, right? Yeah, so why can't we do the same thing? So the challenge is really, even though it's going to cost you, or it may cost you, think about, and this is something I'm pushing for myself, think about it more on an institutional level and a generational level, and how it's going to impact your kids and your kids' kids. So that's something that I wanted to just kind of like say.